Hello, everybody, and you are very welcome today to the broadcast. 25 weeks ago, when lockdown was really starting to kick in, the first one in particular, not going by the level 4 that I'm going to be going into tonight, but 25 weeks ago, I spoke with today's guest, Sandra Losty. And Sandra runs Recovery Hour. Sandra, it's an addiction support group that you decided there was need for it, and there was a need for it online, particularly, back when we were just things were kicking off. Fill us in, refresh viewers on what it is and where we're at today with it now.
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Barbara. And we're still there.
And we're still there.
We're still there. Yeah, it's hard to believe 25 weeks, but back in March at the very first kind of hard lockdown, and it was the 18th of March, we had the first meeting. And it was the day before people say, well, I say that people say, but I actually heard in my head, open up a Zoom room, because I was connected to a community on Twitter of people who are openly in recovery, talking about recovery, supporting each other in recovery, lovely motivational quotes, people having difficult days, support, that kind of stuff. And I heard in my head, which I'm going to call divine inspiration, because my whole life is held together with these moments of divine inspiration.
We need them.
We need them, absolutely. I don't ever want to be in a place where I don't believe in them. And put a few tweets out, meeting room open tomorrow, 18th of March, because I knew it was only a matter of time before the physical support rooms were going to have to close, because everything was closing down where there was a gathering. And that didn't happen quite immediately. And then when it happened, it maybe took a week or so for it to, so the rooms were still open for maybe 2-3 weeks. And then they had to get the close. So this community came in online. We ran the meetings like the fellowship meetings people would be used to, because we all need something familiar, particularly in challenging times. And we had people come in from lockdown, never been next or near a recovery room in real life, saw this because they were connected on Twitter, saw this and LinkedIn. And here we are, however many months or weeks that is from the 18th of March. And we're now a global community.
And that's just it. It has become a global community. So much so that, and I wrote it down here, you, on October the 4th, you had your 200th meeting.
We did. 200th meeting. And it was marked, it was quite by accident, but actually it was, again, another moment of divine intervention. It was marked by having a specific meeting to acknowledge people who are in recovery, but have taken that a little bit of a more public step to talk about or do something about helping other people in recovery. So one person wrote a book, another person has developed a brand of clothing that goes specifically to help people with mental health, and another person wrote a play. So It's all coming from their personal experience, but it's an endeavor to help other people understand in a slightly different way, raise awareness in a slightly different way. So I interviewed those 3 people on that anniversary night, but I had set the interview prior to realizing it was the 200th meeting. Now, when I say 200, I mean it was the 200th meeting consecutively of the evening meetings. That's not counting the groups that happen throughout the day, the study groups, the women's meeting. That's literally every evening at 8 o'clock.
And that's the thing, because it's every night at 8 o'clock. Every night at 8 o'clock. And I'm actually popping up the link there. Now, I do have an email address for you that I will pop up, but this all started through Twitter.
Yeah.
So if anybody is on Twitter at all, I highly, I recommend and I suggest that you connect with Sandra there at Recovery Hour on Twitter, and you can follow. And the thing is, somebody can just decide, will I just dip in and see, or will I not? Because one of the things you said to me the other day was, when people, I mean, there were those that might have been aware they already had an issue and they had a problem. But when lockdown happened and people were working from home, a whole different awareness kind of came about.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they talked about it being the wine o'clock being day o'clock, that it. So what happened with people was their commute to work was gone and their commute back from work was gone. So when they finished work at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in their home, traditionally or habitually, whatever way you want to look at that, their wine o'clock started when they got home. They maybe had a bit of dinner, whatever. They were sitting down to relax and that sort of stuff. But there were particular things that happened before that, and they were all gone now. They were all gone. So the commute back to the house, or the getting the house ready, or the dinner, they were probably doing that in through their work. So those routines were gone. And wine o'clock that might have been 8 o'clock was now 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock. One woman came in and she said, I just thought, well, I'm at home, and it was actively drinking wine while on work meetings, in her head thinking, I'm in my own home, but not connected to, you're still in a workspace. Yeah. So it's crossed a lot of boundaries. Like, it's for people who may have had the problem that wasn't causing them a problem just yet, or they were able to manage it. That has started to slip now for people.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I know. I think we mentioned it actually back then as well, and that was the fear that it would start creeping into during the day, and would people even realize that, or even, why am I drinking at this time of the day? It's not something I ever used to do. So there's a whole different habitual, there are different habits now then that are starting to build up at home.
Yeah.
The other thing, and one of the things is because your friend Robbie, his sister, had, you just happened to say to me today, and I thought this was brilliant, but I think is key.
Yeah, she would say, when he would drink, she would say, if drink was the answer, what was the question? So if the question is, how do I get out of this difficulty, or how do I make life better, is the drink the answer to that question? And it really kind of helped to make me aware of, I'm seeing that as the answer, but I haven't actually processed what the question was. So it was very useful, very useful.
And it really is a key to it. I suppose there's lots of other substances apart from alcohol that we could actually say that, well, if that is your answer, well, what was your question in the first place? Like, what is it you're trying to get to?
Yeah.
Where have you started from? What was the process of your thinking back then? But so the structure of how the meetings go now, as you say, you do it every night at 8 o'clock, but you also then have various group sessions and, topics and themes. So how does that all work? How does it go?
So what happened was, organically, which is fantastic, people who were coming in for the first few weeks. And I, as I said before, I thought this was only going to be for 2 weeks of the lockdown up to the 29th.
Here's your
March.
sister.
And the whole country, and I was holding that myself and that sort of stuff. And then when the next set of lockdown weeks came in, I put it out to the group and said, I can't hold this myself. Like, I'm happy to have the space, but in terms of finding a speaker for every meeting, finding a couple of readers, that sort of stuff. So people stepped up immediately. Immediately they stepped up. And 3 of them are still there hosting on their same nights, which is fantastic. So that was a huge help to me personally, but also it actually helped to build the community, even wider. So people they were connected with on Twitter started to see them talking about this particular night or this particular topic we're going to talk about. So we run with your traditional style fellowship meetings for a number of months. And then it became apparent that the community was forming and conversations were being had that you wouldn't ordinarily have in a face-to-face meeting, because they were actual conversations where in the fellowship meetings it would be a sharing. It wouldn't be a conversation. So the conversation started to happen about different things that were happening in people's lives. So I kind of thought, well, let's actually facilitate these conversations where people can have them in a little bit more in depth and understanding. So then we started to do the specialist evenings where we would actually tell people the specific topic of this meeting is, and then we'd let them know, right? So we'd make it clear it's a little bit different from the sharing meeting, but you're still welcome. You can still come and listen, still see if it's for you. And that worked well. And then there was recurring themes that were coming up that I thought we need to address this. So one of them was, how do we meditate? How do we meditate properly? You know, and realizing that most people were relaxing rather than meditating, which is quite different, you know. And
it's hard to do, actually. Meditating is hard to do.
Yeah.
I know I've lasted about 3 or 4 minutes, you know, at different times. Yeah. Because when you're starting, you know, it is switching off the brain, just come into yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so I can only imagine that somebody who is going through what they're going through as regards recovery, that they've even more hurdles to cross to be able to get into that practice of meditating.
Yeah, and you know what, Barbara, they do in some ways, but I think when it comes to meditation broadly, everybody has, not everybody, that's too general, but most people would start the way you started there, going, it's about emptying the mind and being still and all that sort of stuff. And it's not only that, you know.
Oh no, I know.
And when we come into practicing meditation with an understanding that that's what it is, it's never going to work. You're never going to get at it. It's always going to be a struggle, which is what meditation is not about. So it was helping people understand, because we're using the 11th step in the 12 steps is prayer and meditation. So it's not meditation in isolation. It's understanding where prayer fits in, whether you believe in God or not. Doesn't matter whether you believe in God. It's not a religious thing. It's understanding how they connect to get the maximum benefit out of it. So that's in process every Friday now, and that's a systematic program. And then the other topic that we're covering in a very in-depth way is codependency. So what happens when there's a period of sobriety or clean time, whatever language a person wants to use, where they realize that the substance is no longer causing the chaos in their life. But life is quite difficult anyway, because we have these ways or habits of engaging with other people, being in relationships, relating to challenges in life, habits of, I mightn't pick up a drink, but I might escape into something else, you know. So we start to realize that there are other recoveries in us that we need to look at without the substance, you know. So it's taking the substance away resolves a certain amount of chaos, but then we realize actually we have a life problem here now. We need to learn how to live life. And that they're the conversations that we're having with people, is understanding those elements so that they can step deeper into their recovery life. That drink is not a problem, or I don't mean drink is not a problem. Drink is not the answer. Drink is not the go-to, or drugs or gambling or food is not the go-to. That the go-to is, okay, I have a bit of information about how my reaction is to particular situations. Let's tap into that.
And would part of that, Sandra, be that not to replace this one substance that you've just given up, to replacing it with another habit, to, you know, to put it in replace it. Do you know what I mean? Because
common. It's common, because ultimately we are, whatever we're doing, whatever substance or whatever addictive behavior we're engaging in, we're triggering the pleasure part of the brain. So the brain just wants to go pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. So if you take alcohol out of the way, and then you're like, well, there's a void here. What do I do? Or, you know, what is that now? We may find it in food, or we may find it in gambling, or we may find it in sex. And because it's not alcohol or drugs, there's less seemingly, and I'm going to say seemingly, there's less damage. Okay. But it doesn't necessarily help us to live our lives the way we want to live. Right. Which is what all programs, recovery programs, their aim is to help the person live a life without reverting to something that's going to cause them harm or other people harm.
So the conversations then that have opened up, have they been a surprise to you as the journey has gone on since the first time we spoke?
I suppose it's a surprise, number one, that we're still there.
But that's testament to your work and you as a person.
And also to, yes, I may have started it, but people have stepped up to the mark. People have come in and made this a community. Like, I won't ever make a community on my own. You know, it's when people come in and they want to be a part of it. And those people have made it a community and they're rock solid. I'm delighted that they're wanting to be with it. So the surprising thing probably for me, let me think about that now for a second. The surprising thing is, I suppose, a delight more so than a surprise, is how open people are. They say, I feel safe here. I feel safe. I can talk about this here. And so that's the real testament of the community, is that there's a phrase that's used in asset-based community development, and it says, communities are built at the speed that trust is made. So
I love that.
So isn't that fabulous?
Yeah,
right?
I love that.
So for me, that's a massive feedback, that people felt they could trust in this group enough and the people in it enough to ask these questions and have these conversations, you know, and say that I feel safe here. Like, that's just absolute joy to my ears.
And particularly because it's online. You know, it's one thing to sit in a room with a group of people and have the whole physical experience, to be able to say, you know, physically here in this space, I feel safe. But for that to be able to come across online, I mean, that is huge. Not just for you, but for the participants too. And you have quite a number of kind of average, you have about 20 odd that would always be coming through. Is that the group meetings now, or at night the individual, the 8 o'clock session, say, every evening?
So the 8 o'clock is a group. It's still a group. It's just different nights have a different focus. So for 4 of those nights, we would still run a fellowship type kind of meeting where there'd be a speaker, speak about their experience for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then people would share back wherever they got out of it or wherever was going on for the day. And then the other 3 nights are topic based, you know, that are related to helping people in recovery to kind of think about these kind of things. So they all happen at 8 o'clock. The other groups are the smaller groups. They're like study groups that we do, or there's a women's group that I run that's around interview skills and public speaking, about them going for interviews, maybe having been out of work for a number of years due to their addiction, and how do they put themselves across? How do they make their experience an asset?
Yes.
How do you verbalize that to an employer? Outwardly, you might think I'm lower than a snake's belly because I've been an addict or an alcoholic for 20 years. But actually, here's the skills that I can bring to your company because of that. So I do that separately. So yes, I suppose if people are looking to connect and they're new, they're brand new people, the topic meetings are useful. They get to see how we interact with each other, which to me is just as important as being there saying, my name is whatever and I have this problem. Seeing how people interact with each other is something I hope they would like to be connected to, you know. But if they want a fellowship type kind of meeting, then we would direct them to the meetings that focus on that specifically.
And the thing is, and one of the key things that's coming across here to me in particular as well, is this is voluntary.
Yeah.
You have no external funding support
No.
or anything to keep this running.
No, it's voluntary. It's everybody is a volunteer. It's not just me. Everybody gives up their time freely, willingly give their time freely. People are popping in ideas about sessions they think might work, help people. It's phenomenal how people want to be a part of it. It's and there needs to be a little bit of structure in there, and that's my responsibility to make sure that the place stays safe. So I think you asked me a question around if people wanted to come in, say, for the first time, or they weren't sure, or they may realize they have a difficulty. Can they come along? And absolutely they can come along. They can keep their camera off and they can
because I was going to get to that, because we did mention that the last time we spoke in March, April, is that when somebody comes online, because it's via Zoom you do it, that they didn't actually have to use their real name if they didn't want to, because they can stay anonymous and keep their camera off, so they can still watch what's happening, but they don't have to reveal themselves if they don't want to.
They don't. But what I will say is, reach out to me, because we're all very protective of the room, and I've had people message me and say, I'm doing such and such a work or whatever, can I come and see what happens in your meeting? No, you can't come and observe people. No. So I will be very clear about the no. I'm good at saying no when it's an appropriate no. So just reach out to me, tell me maybe you've seen me here, or tell me you've seen me on Twitter. Reach out to me. And it's not about revealing yourself to a group. It's just so I can say, oh, this person was in touch with me. If they come in, change their name to Mary or John or whatever the case may be, because I have that Zoom room with the highest level of security, that if we are invaded in any way by a Zoom bomber, they won't be in there for more than 2 seconds, because they'll be gone.
Oh, there.
Gone.
Absolutely,
so,
been there.
So there is that element of, we have to acknowledge that some people want to access this kind of space for reasons other than looking for help or seeing if this will help them. And we just do a tiny little level of security because it's online, because we want to protect people's anonymity and privacy, that we just have that. Reach out to me, let me know, because I have to give you the login. Login, and I'm only going to give you the login if I think you're okay.
Well, that's true. No, and I think it does add that extra level of confidence for anybody who's going in, because they know not only have they had to go through these checks, but everybody who's in the room. So they know that everybody is there for that genuine reason. And that they've had to go through yourself or one of your team members now, I suppose you would call them, that also help with you. So you have this team. Now, I have to say, Sandra, I think, it was listening to the debates the other day on the radio about the different things with the off licenses and pubs and everything to do with lockdown. And I thought of you and I said, my gosh, there has to have been some momentous change in the service that you're providing. There has. And you are doing just phenomenal work, helping all these people. And as I say, you and your team, like your volunteers doing it, and I think that is just absolutely brilliant. And we have I know we have a couple of comments here. Turan. Now, Turan has popped up a comment. Really impressed. Yeah, a wonderful role model. Now, I interviewed Turan a few months back. He's a hypnotherapist. And he's following you now on Twitter. So I know now, even for anybody that he would meet, that he would say, listen, there is a group I know of. And, and it comes without saying. Catherine, we have a message from Catherine. Yes, such a well-needed support. Absolutely. Particularly at this time. And now, because we're now entering a higher level of lockdown again, that we're moving back up the scale, and we're coming towards Christmas, that there are going to be challenges because we're closer to Christmas. There's going to be challenges now that are going to arise for people. And if they need help, this is where they can stop off and get that assistance, to help them clear their head, I suppose.
Yeah, Absolutely. And Christmas is always a stressor without lockdown. Like it is, like there's more social outings and that sort of thing. So with lockdown, that may minimize the amount of invites that you get. So you're not necessarily in those situations. So, but then people will do them in their home. And then it's even nearly more acceptable to have the drink in the home because it's family and that sort of stuff. So we will swap one set of problems for another, and what is a solution here will actually become a problem here. So it's around that. So what I'd say to people is just be like, if your routine is being disrupted around your work because of COVID, if you see a difference in your drinking pattern and you have difficulty putting that back to a later time, then do reach out to somebody. If it's your doctor, if it's somebody online, a friend that you might know, reach out to somebody and just acknowledge it. Just because sometimes people go, God, I didn't realize I was starting to drink at 5 o'clock. I don't want to be doing that. And it's an awareness thing for a lot of people rather than it be a problem, So get that awareness of, actually, I only want to be having a glass of wine or whatever it is at 8 o'clock. I don't want to be having it at 5 o'clock. I want to do something else at my time. So have that little bit of self-reflection and reach out to somebody to just have the conversation. I'm not going to say, oh, you have a problem. I'm not going to diagnose that for you. I might ask you a question that you might diagnose yourself, but I'm not going to diagnose you, So have the conversation.
Absolutely. Sandra, you've been an absolute lady to come back on today for us. And I am really delighted that your service has expanded and is doing so well. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that anybody who will connect with you and your team is going to gain such valuable insights about themselves and get support. So thank you so much for coming back on today. And I'm just going to pop up your email there again if anybody wants to get in touch with Sandra. It is sandra@recoveryhour.ie. And her Twitter, please do, if you're on Twitter, follow @recoveryhour, and no doubt your DM box there does be very busy as well. But Sandra, thank you so much for coming on, and please God, we'll get chatting to you again someday. Cheers. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.